I'm Marylia Kelley, and I'm Executive Director of Tri-Valley Cares. We act to change U.S. policy by stopping the further development of nuclear weapons and working tirelessly for their elimination. I am standing at the west gate of the Livermore Lab, where I can see scientists, engineers, and support personnel coming to work. They're coming right behind the camera, and it may be some of the sound that you hear. Many will spend today, Good Friday, creating new weapons of nuclear mass destruction. Livermore Lab is one of 2 locations in the United States that designs every single nuclear warhead and bomb in the United States stockpile. The other is Los Alamos Lab in New Mexico. Livermore Lab is owned by the U.S. Department of Energy National Nuclear Security Administration, and it's operated by a consortium of contractors, including Bechtel Corporation and the University of California, which has managed Livermore Lab since its inception in 1952, despite decades of principled protests from professors and students alike. Livermore Lab's most recent federal budget shows that more than 85% of its Department of Energy funding is used for nuclear weapons activities. That's the name of the budget line. For comparison, less than 2% of the funding is for science, and less than 1% of the budget is allocated for research into the budget line called energy efficiency and renewable energy. Therefore, when I speak to you this morning about what goes on inside this classified fence line, it's fitting to begin with Livermore Lab's central role in driving a new and dangerous global arms race. I'll focus my brief remarks on 2 new warheads that Livermore Lab is developing, and briefly mention a third that Livermore hopes to have a role in developing. Some of you have heard me speak on Good Friday about the new warhead that Livermore is developing expressly for a sneak nuclear attack on an unsuspecting population anywhere in the world. This warhead is for what's called the long-range standoff weapon. It's intended for pilots to be able to stand off a target by thousands of miles and launch a precisely guided, radar-evading nuclear weapon. By any measure, Livermore's new warhead for this LRSO, long-range standoff capability, is a first strike offensive weapon. In fiscal 2021 alone, the government is spending more than $1 billion for this new warhead called the W80-4. I need to tell Mark that my phone suddenly says it's low. So if you want to set up a second phone, that would be great. The second new warhead I want to highlight today is the W87-1. It's in an earlier stage of development at Livermore Lab, and this is the first fully new warhead design since the announced end of the Cold War more than 30 years ago. Livermore Lab is planning to have this new warhead rolling off assembly lines by 2030. According to documents, the lab is looking into 126 new technologies for this warhead. This includes a new design plutonium bomb core, significantly different than anything in the US stockpile. Indeed, Livermore's W87-1 warhead is the central reason the US is planning to expand plutonium bomb core, also called plutonium pit, manufacturing at least two locations, the Los Alamos Lab in New Mexico and Savannah River site in South Carolina. In this fiscal year alone, the government is investing nearly $2 billion in the development of the 87-1 warhead and new pit production capability to support it. Separately, the Pentagon is investing in a whole new ground-based strategic deterrent, or GBSD, intercontinental ballistic missile to carry this warhead. The third warhead program in which Livermore Lab is involved this year is called the W-93. Well, the 80-4 that I talked about is plane launched, and the 87-1 is ICBM launched. This would be a sub-launched warhead. Here I need to tell you that the UK depends on US warhead designs for its arsenal, which is 100% on submarines. And the UK is currently lobbying the US to spend billions on this new warhead because the UK wants to use the W-93 design to upgrade its own nuclear capabilities. Overall, this so-called nuclear modernization program is slated to cost the US upwards of $2 trillion over 30 years. In the coming weeks, when you hear talk about how we don't have money for civilian infrastructure, I invite you to think about the $2 trillion for nuclear weapons infrastructure that the US is buying into without much discussion. On Good Friday, this day, I want to say a few words about what is being sacrificed by the nuclear weapons work, specifically at Livermore Lab. And I want to conclude with some good news about what we can all do to create change. Make no mistake, our environment and our health have been sacrificed in the name of nuclear development here. Tri-Valley Cares has documented more than 1 million curies of radiation has been released into our air by Livermore Lab. What is 1 million curies, some of you might ask? According to documents, this is equal to the amount of radiation deposited on the people of Hiroshima, Japan. It's been dribbled out of stacks on these buildings over many years, and not all at once in a flash of blinding heat. Nonetheless, we too are its victims. Livermore Lab employees have experienced high levels of cancers and other illnesses stemming from toxic and radioactive exposures. Nearly 3,000 current and former Livermore Lab employees, or their survivors, have applied for federal compensation due to illnesses related to on-the-job exposures. Past epidemiological studies have shown that children born in Livermore or moved to Livermore as children have high levels of cancers and other illnesses stemming from toxic and radioactive materials when you compare them to other similar children. And cancer, of course, is just one negative health outcome from exposures. The soil and groundwater aquifer at the Livermore Lab main site, right where I'm standing, and the Site 300 high explosive testing range the lab operates near Tracy have both been polluted by nuclear weapons activities. In fact, both locations are on the federal EPA's list of Superfund sites, the most contaminated sites in our country. So what can we do today? There are effective actions we can all take to change the future. In the coming days, the new Biden administration will release its fiscal 2022 budget request to Congress. Tri-Valley Cares will have action alerts on its website at www.trivalleycares.org. And just 1 week ago this Friday, Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts and our own Bay Area Representative Ro Khanna, doesn't represent Livermore, but represents the South Bay, introduced a new bill called the Invest in Cures Before Missiles, or ICBM. This new bill, which is currently seeking co-sponsors, would prevent any money from being spent on that new ICBM I mentioned for Livermore Lab's W-87-1 warhead. Further, the bill mandates that funding for the W-87 warhead instead be transferred, quote, to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to research and combat emerging diseases. In the coming few days, I'll be writing about this, and I invite you to download the bill and the information from our website and to use it to persuade your members of Congress to support it. So we all have fresh opportunities before us to change the direction of US nuclear policy and move instead to the abolition of nuclear weapons that we and most of the people of the world seek. This is the journey I invite you to take with me and with millions of peace advocates, not only from here in Livermore, but from across the entire earth. Together, we can do this. We can make this paradigm shift. Peace, shalom, thank you.